I still remember the first time I saw myself in full makeup, and didn't recognize the person staring back at me. Not because I looked ridiculous, but because for the first time in my life, I looked real. Hey, my name is Daniel. I'm 27 years old. I grew up in a small town where boys were supposed to act like boys, period. Football. Deep voices. No emotions. But I was different. When I was about 8, I used to sneak into my mom's room when no one was home. I'd run my fingers over her dresses. I'd hold her lipstick like it was something sacred. I didn't even understand the word crossdressing back then. I just knew it made my heart race, and calm down at the same time. It felt wrong. And right. I kept that part of me hidden for years. Through high school. Through college. Through relationships. I became really good at pretending. But this story, this transformation, happened last year. The day I finally decided I was done hiding from myself. If you've ever carried a secret so heavy it feels like it's pressing on your chest, you know what I mean? It started on a random Tuesday night. I was sitting alone in my apartment scrolling through social media, and I saw a makeup transformation video. Before and after. The confidence. The glow. The freedom. And something inside me snapped. Thought, why not me? Immediately the fear answered back. What if someone finds out? What if you look stupid? What if this proves you're broken? But another voice, quieter, softer, said, what if this is who you really are? I walked to my bedroom closet. At the back, hidden under old jackets, was a small box. Inside were a few pieces I'd secretly bought months earlier. A black dress, sheer tights, a pair of modest heels. I hadn't had the courage to wear them fully. Not with makeup. Not completely. My hands were shaking as I sat on the edge of my bed. Just try, I whispered to myself. I told myself it would just be for me. No pictures. No posting. Just a private moment. But deep down, I knew this was bigger than that. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. Drop a comment if you've ever stood on the edge of a decision that scared you but excited you at the same time. The next day after work, I did something I'd never done before. I walked into a makeup store. My heart was pounding so loud I thought everyone could hear it. The bright lights. The smell of perfume. Rows of foundations in shades I didn't even understand. A sales associate smiled at me. Can I help you? For a split second I almost ran. But I swallowed and said, yeah. I'm looking for foundation. She didn't blink. She just nodded and started asking about skin tone, undertones, coverage. She treated me like any other customer. That small moment meant everything. That was my first taste of acceptance. Back home I laid everything out like it was a ritual. Foundation. Concealer. Mascara. A soft pink lipstick. A cheap eyeshadow palette I picked up nervously. When I started applying it I was terrible. Foundation too light. Blush too heavy. I sneezed while doing mascara and nearly poked my eye. At one point I looked in the mirror and burst out laughing. I look like a confused clown, I said out loud. But I didn't quit. Fully, carefully. I blended. I wiped mistakes. I tried again. And as the layers built up, something shifted. It wasn't just makeup. It was transformation. Then something happened that changed everything. Have you ever tried something new and felt completely out of your depth at first? Tell me. I put on the dress last. The fabric slid over my skin, cool and soft. The tights hugged my legs. The heels made me wobble at first. I nearly face-planted into my dresser. Okay, that part was not glamorous. But when I finally stood still and looked in the mirror, I froze. The face staring back at me wasn't a costume. It wasn't a joke. It was me. My features softened. My eyes looked bigger. There was vulnerability there, but also strength. I felt exposed. And powerful. I practiced walking. Slow steps. One foot in front of the other. I adjusted the way I held my shoulders. I experimented with smiling. Each movement felt like learning a new language. The language of my own identity. And then, this was the shocking revelation, I started crying. Not dramatic sobbing. Just quiet tears rolling down carefully blended foundation. Because for the first time in my life I didn't feel like I was performing masculinity. I wasn't pretending. I was meeting my authentic self. That was the emotional breakthrough. Thought I was ready. I wasn't. Have you ever seen a version of yourself that made everything suddenly make sense? Here's where it gets real. Instead of taking everything off like I usually would, I did something bold. I ordered food. And I told myself I would answer the door dressed exactly as I was. My heart was racing faster than ever. My hands were cold. Every insecurity screamed at me. What if the delivery guy laughs? What if he stares? When the knock came, I almost didn't move. But I walked to the door. Opened it. He looked at me. Paused. Here's your order, he said casually. That was it. No shock. No mockery. Just normal. I almost laughed from relief. But the real turning point happened a week later. I decided to attend a small LGBTQ+ meetup in the city, dressed fully as myself. Walking into that cafe felt like stepping off a cliff. But people smiled. A woman complimented my eyeliner. Someone said, "You look amazing." And for the first time in a public space, I felt confidence instead of shame. There was an awkward moment when I tripped slightly in my heels and almost knocked over a chair. Yes, it happened, but instead of humiliation I laughed. And others laughed with me, not at me. That was freedom. Then someone asked me gently, "Is this your first time out?" I nodded. They smiled and said, "Welcome." What happened next shocked me to my core. They told me, "You don't have to choose one side. You just have to choose honesty." That sentence stayed with me. What would you have done in my situation? When I got home that night, I sat in front of the mirror again. Same dress. Slightly smudged lipstick. Tired eyes. But this time I wasn't questioning myself. I wasn't ashamed. This cross-dressing journey wasn't about becoming someone else. It was about integration. Acceptance. Self-discovery. Before makeup I saw limits. After makeup I saw possibility. Before I saw fear. After I saw courage. It changed how I walk into rooms now. Even when I'm dressed normally. Because confidence doesn't come from the clothes. It comes from alignment with your identity. And if you're listening to this while hiding a part of yourself, let me tell you something. You deserve freedom. You deserve to explore your authentic self without shame. This transformation wasn't about fabric or foundation. It was about giving myself permission to exist fully. If you want to hear part 2, where I tell my family, let me know. Have you experienced something similar? And I'll leave you with this. If you're hiding who you really are, remember this. The scariest step often leads to the most powerful transformation. The night I told my family I was cross-dressing, I thought I might lose everything. Instead, I lost something else. The fear that had controlled me for 27 years. If you listen to part 1, you know about my first real transformation. The dress. The makeup. The meetup. The confidence. But here's the thing about courage. Once you taste it, you can't go back. For a week after that cafe night, I felt different. Taller. Lighter. Like my spine had finally straightened after years of hunching. But I was still living 2 lives. Daniel at home. Daniel at work. Me. The full version. The authentic self I was slowly discovering. I kept thinking, what's the point of freedom if it's still a secret? The truth is, my biggest fear wasn't strangers. It was my dad. He's old school. Military background. Strong opinions. Not unkind, just rigid. I'd built up this scenario in my head where he'd say, "This isn't my son." Have you ever been more afraid of disappointing someone than losing them? Drop a comment if you know that feeling. The decision came after something small. My mom called me one evening and said, "You sound happier lately. Did something good happen?" I froze. I almost lied. But I said, "Yeah. I've been figuring some things out." She paused. "Like what?" And I heard myself say, "I think I'm ready to stop pretending." There was silence on the phone. Not angry silence. Just processing. That night, I booked a train ticket home for the weekend. The entire ride, my thoughts were spiraling. What if they laugh? What if they think I'm confused? What if this ruins everything? But another voice, stronger now, said, "What if this is the moment you become free?" I had no idea how that weekend would unfold. I didn't show up in full makeup at the front door. I'm not going to pretend I was that fearless. But I packed my dress, my heels, my makeup bag. That alone felt rebellious. Saturday night after dinner I asked, "Can we talk?" My stomach felt like it was folding in on itself. We sat at the kitchen table. Same table where I did homework. Same table where my dad taught me how to fix a broken toaster. And I said it. I've been exploring my identity. I cross-dress sometimes. It's not a joke. It's not a phase. It's part of me. My mom blinked. My dad leaned back in his chair. "What do you mean?" he asked. So I explained. The journey. The transformation. The confidence. The self-discovery. The freedom. I expected anger. Dad, I got questions. Is this about sexuality? No. Are you unhappy being a man? It's not that simple. My voice shook, but I didn't stop. Then something happened that changed everything. My mom said quietly, "Are you ashamed?" And I realized I wasn't anymore. Have you ever said something out loud and felt its power shift instantly? I don't know what came over me, but I said, "Can I show you?" My dad looked confused. My mom nodded slowly. I went to my old bedroom, closed the door. My hands were trembling as I applied foundation, mascara, lipstick. This felt different than the first transformation. This wasn't about seeing myself. It was about letting them see me. When I put on the dress and stepped into the hallway, my heels clicking against the wood floor sounded louder than ever. Each step felt like crossing a bridge that might collapse. I walked into the living room. They looked up. Time slowed. My mom's eyes filled with tears immediately. My dad stared. And I braced for impact. Instead, he said something I never expected. "You look comfortable. Not pretty. Not handsome. Not confused. Comfortable." And that word broke me. Because that's exactly how it felt. I thought I was ready for this moment. I wasn't. Have you ever underestimated someone's capacity to surprise you? There were awkward questions. Some clumsy comments. My dad asked, "Is this permanent?" And I said, "It's not about permanent. It's about honesty." At one point my heel caught in the rug and I almost fell again. Apparently that's just my thing now, and my dad instinctively reached out to steady me. That small gesture meant more than any speech. There was a tense moment when he said, "I just don't want people to hurt you." And I snapped back, "People already have." From me hiding. Silence filled the room. That was the peak emotion. Because in that silence I realized this wasn't about clothing. It wasn't about makeup. It was about courage. Finally my dad said quietly, "I don't fully understand it. But I don't want you living in fear in my house." That was the turning point. Acceptance doesn't always come as applause. Sometimes it comes as willingness. And that willingness was enough. What would you have said in that moment? Sunday morning I had coffee with my parents. No makeup, just me in sweatpants. But something fundamental had changed. The air felt lighter. My dad asked normal questions about work. My mom asked if I needed help finding better heels because those ones looked dangerous. We laughed. Not everything was magically perfect. There are still conversations to have. Boundaries to navigate. Growth to happen. But here's what I learned. Courage invites clarity. Crossdressing was never about escaping who I was. It was about expanding it. Before I lived in fragments. After I live in integration. And if you're somewhere on your own journey, whether it's about identity, acceptance, or any hidden part of yourself, listen carefully. You are not broken for wanting to explore who you are. You are not weak for being afraid. And you are not selfish for choosing your authentic self. Where I show up to work as the full version of me, let me know. Have you ever had a conversation that changed your entire relationship with someone? I'll end with this. If you're hiding who you really are, remember this. The people who truly love you might need time, but they can't love a version of you they never get to see.